All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of Ironmen. My name is Tom, and I'm the facilitator for this group. We are discussing the 12 Shifts by Jamil Frazier. Tonight is episode 4, Growth Equals Pain. Our meetings consist of 4 different tent poles. We talk a lot about 4 quantity or 4 qualities. We have that a lot in our program, so I figured we would do 4 for this as well. We have story, study, support, and share. Story is one of our members shares a story. 2 is we study the text. 3, we support each other with recipes, with ideas, tips, ways to maneuver this life that many of us have chosen. And then we turn off the recording and we just share honestly and openly about anything that might be on our minds. Just a few meeting principles for anybody that's new, or to remind those that haven't been in a couple of weeks. We want to limit crosstalk on Zoom. It can be difficult for people to talk over each other, so kind of wait till somebody finishes, and then you can raise your hand or just start talking, and you'll be called upon, and you can have your say. Remain muted except when you're sharing. This helps to eliminate the background noise. We want to avoid divisive issues, things like politics, religion. That's not why we're here. We can have those discussions at other times. And we want to share from our experience, share from things that have happened to you. We are here to sharpen, not to fix each other. A few things that the meeting is not. It is not a teaching. It is not a soapbox. It's not a substitute for reading the text. It is not a negative space, and it is not a sales tool for Optavia. It is group-led, discussion-based, interactive, welcoming, honest, and positive. And that's what we're trying to do. We are studying the book by Jamil Frazier, The 12 Shifts. There it is. And tonight we're going to start with our story. And Jim has agreed to share a little bit about his story. So I will turn it over to him. Jim, the floor is yours. Oh, you know what I wanted to do before that, Jim? I'm sorry to interrupt. We got to do introductions. I got to follow my own script, which I don't even have. So good thing I got here at 7:30. So why don't we go around and introduce each other? And I thought kind of fun thing to talk about would be plans for the holidays. Do you travel during the holidays? Do you go anywhere? Do you have any big things planned? I myself, as I said, I'm Tom. I'm in Lakeland, Florida, and we're going on a cruise in a couple of weeks on Disney for Christmas, and that's going to be our big Christmas gift this year. So we're going with my wife's parents, and it's going to be a great time. So that's what we're doing. Alan, why don't you go next? You're next to my feed.
Okay. This time of year is a great time for us to stay home. We have an old stone farmhouse with a walk-in fireplace, and we usually celebrate Christmas with brunch and presents and a fire for the day, and just kind of hang out, maybe have a few guests come and visit and hang out with us, and rotate through phone calls to family members and call it a day from there. And that way, if we have weird weather, we're not worried about it because we're already at home.
Sounds good. I think Slimothy, I think you're next.
Yeah, we're planning to go up to Pennsylvania, be up with my parents and my sister, and just kind of get together and relax. And I like New Jersey. We live in Jersey, and Jersey's too flat for me. I need the mountains. I'm a country guy at heart, but living in suburbia is, I love to go back home. But just the mountains are beautiful up there. So that's where we're going.
Fantastic. How about you, Jack?
I missed who. Did you say me?
Yeah, I said Chuck.
Oh, okay. Oh, Chuck. I thought.
Did they say Jim or Chuck?
Chuck.
Oh, they said me. I'm waiting for Jim to pop in here. What am I doing? No, staying home for the holidays. Just hanging out here. Nathan and his kids are coming in, I believe a couple days after Christmas. And also Jason is coming home from Korea and making a quick stop down here, a week stop. So looking forward to everybody coming down here. But yeah, we're not going anywhere this year. Maybe next year.
Nice.
So
All right, Nathan, you're up.
Hey, so I'm gonna hang out with Chuck. That's what I'm doing for Christmas. I'll be driving down, bringing the whole fam, have a good time down there.
Where you come down from?
Pennsylvania.
All right.
So.
Fine, Mr. Irway.
Hey, so yeah, as far as I know, we're just gonna go to my in-laws, which we live just like 15 minutes from them. We'll spend the night there and do Christmas morning with them, and my wife's brother and his wife will come over, and we'll have a good time. Then we'll probably try to do Christmas with my parents the day after or something like that. So nothing big, just spending time with family.
Nice. And back safe in the Dominican Republic. John Hanley, hi.
Hello. Yep. So I'm John. Yeah, I run a children's home with my wife here in the Dominican Republic. Our staff are off over the holidays, so we don't go anywhere. Our main activity is cooking for all the kids, and a special treat is we mainly do American style food for them over the holidays instead of rice and beans. We do hamburgers, tacos, that sort of stuff.
Awesome. All right, is that everybody? Great. Okay, now, Jim, your story. You're up.
My story. Well, for my introduction there for that part, I'm up in Pennsylvania and we will be gathering with family. We will be with Nate before he leaves to go be with Chuck, because Nate is my son-in-law, married my daughter. And a little bit about my story, how I got involved with Optavia is we started Optavia for my wife's sake. She had nerve pain and only on one side of her body, but it kept getting worse and she was getting tired. I was lifting her physically out of bed in the morning because she couldn't get out of bed. And finally, my daughter, Virginia, who's married to Nate, said, you should talk to Nancy about what this is. She does this Optavia, which we knew Nancy was doing Optavia, but we really knew nothing about it. So we jumped in together. I wanted to do it with her to give her some support. And my backstory is I've always been active throughout my life. I was in sports in high school. I've been a volunteer firefighter for 40 years now, started when I was 14. And in 2010, after a snowstorm, we were at the firehouse all day. We came home and I was going to plow our driveway here with my tractor, which was in our barn. And when I pulled the tractor out, not allowing for the snow that had blown in, I pulled a beam from the bottom of my barn and collapsed the barn on top of, partially collapsed it on top of myself. And Nate happened to be here that day. He unhooked my my hood that was stuck on a nail on a board. I had stored a horse barn up there on that floor that I took down years prior to that. And the short story is I fractured some vertebrae in my back, smashed my hand, but I had, other than the fractured vertebrae, I had no broken bones, amazingly enough. And so when we started Optavia, it was 8 years later. I had put on weight because I couldn't do a lot of activity like I used to before. And I started with her. And 2 weeks later, I remember saying, we live in an old farmhouse. Going up the steps on the outside deck, I came in and I said to Pam that, geez, my knees don't hurt anymore. And I didn't take any ibuprofen. And I found out that cutting the sugar and doing the plan cuts down all the inflammation. And I felt great. So we've been on it now since 2018. We decided to coach. I said, when we started, we said, if this works, we're going to tell everybody. And it worked for her. She's off the medication she had to take for her nerve pain, and I no longer have to lift her out of bed in the morning. Got down to I lost 26 pounds total, and got down to my weight when I graduated high school. 2 years ago, I started an exercise program, and just recently, a friend of mine who joined us as a coach, he's a fitness trainer, and started a plan for lifting weights to try to optimize. And that's where we're at today.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Jim. It's really appropriate, your story for today, because it talked a lot about pain. And today we're talking about growth equals pain. And it's a great segue into it. So looking at the shift number 4, I'm starting on page 87. So this particular chapter, he has a lot of stories. And I thought it would be good, since I think we all have stories like the one that that Jim just shared. I think we probably all have some stories of how we've gone through a painful time in our life and how it's helped us. So I figured we could either just talk about Jamil's stories, or we could all share our own stories. And that's, since it's a discussion group, I think that's probably a little bit better thing. So I'm going to put that out there, that as we move a little bit later into the episode, I'm going to open that up. So if you've got a story on how you've grown through pain and taken the hard way through, and want to share some of that, we're going to have a time for that a little bit later on. But I'll start with his first story, which is the story of the butterfly. And just in case you haven't read the text, I'll retell it. I'm not going to read it verbatim. But it's basically a young monk is traveling through the countryside, and he comes across some groups of butterfly cocoons, caterpillars and cocoons that they're hatching, and they struggle to get out of the cocoon. He watches one particular one that is really struggling. He can't get out. 10 minutes, 20 minutes goes by. He feels moved that he should help the animal. And finally, he can bear it no longer, and he helps the animal out. And the animal begins to go off to fly, but doesn't have the strength and dies. And the other monks tell him that, this is because it's the struggle that gives them the strength to fly. And if you take the struggle away from them, they're not going to be able to fly. And that is the basic message of the book, or this shift, that the struggle is what sets us through. In fact, what I'm going to read, he says, the struggle makes us strong. Without hardship and discomfort, we do not learn and grow. If you rob the butterfly of its opportunity to break through its own barriers, even though the process is painful and hard to watch, you rob it of the strength and endurance it will need later to fulfill its destiny. Which then he segues into our lives, saying, which makes me wonder, why do we expect life to be easy? Now, we're all men of a certain age. I don't know any of us at this time maybe expect life to be easy. I think we've been educated in that. So I think a lot of us understand that the obstacle is the way. If you have not read a book by Ryan Holiday called The Obstacle is the Way, I highly recommend it. I've just started to get into some of his teachings, and I'm working on another book of his right now and doing some journaling. Show of hands, or I'm not really sure how to work the chat. So, but is anybody familiar with Stoicism, or has done any reading with the Stoics? See, John Irway has, Nate. So, I may be a little late on the train, but I've started kind of getting into this Stoicism and the concept of amor fati, or love fate, which is one of the Stoic principles. And it's kind of what's here in the book, in the shift. And for me, it's all kind of one and the same. But in his book, The Obstacle is the Way, Ryan Holiday confirms that life is not inherently easy, nor should it be. If you wish to grow, stretch your wings, and do more than simply sit on the couch and exist, that you need to go through the obstacle. And amor fati is more than just grinning and bearing it. Amor fati means to love the things that are happening to you. So I get stuck in traffic. I love that. that's more time to listen to podcasts. It's not finding the good in a bad situation. It's loving the bad situation. And that's a shift for me. That's a shift of me going, I got a sinus infection this week. I love that. That was great for me. That will strengthen me. Rather than, oh crap, I got a sinus infection. I'm just lying around the house doing nothing. This is teaching me. This is growing me. I'm going to grow through the hard things. So loving the hard things, loving the obstacles when they come, being able to embrace your fate, I think, is what comes through over and over through every one of these. Whether it's quoting the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, or Frederick Douglass, who says, what is the quote that Jamil actually has tattooed on his arm on this quote? Without struggle, there can be no progress. So that's kind of, to me, the entirety of the shift. He just keeps sharing stories that talk about that and how that is the case. So now I kind of want to just see if anybody else has any part and that they want to share, and maybe, as this is the discussion group, that we're actually not listening to me blabber on, but actually get some other thoughts in there. So guys, do you have any stories? Do you have any thoughts on either Amor Fati or The Obstacle is the Way, or specific stories on how you have grown through a painful situation? Floor is open.
So one thing this brought to my mind is when you refine metals, you have to put it in intense heat in order for it to be purified. And I think that's, what God does in us sometimes. He puts us through some hard times, to the pain, to make us better. And kind of like the obstacle is the way, the fire is the way for us to be better. And I won't tell you exactly, but I've been through some fire in my life, and that fire brought me closer to God, because going through what I went through, it wasn't an easy road, but I came out better for it, and that's, I learned a lot in that time I was going through what I was going through, but it made me a much better spiritually. Was the best growth of my life when I went through that. So
Yeah, I think you're right on, and that we see this all the way through nature. I mean, we see fire refining metals, we see pressure refining diamonds, we see the pain of birth is not, it's not the joy of birth, it's the pain of childbearing. We see that over and over again in nature. So why should we expect it to be any different in our own lives? John Hanley, you got a hand up.
Yeah, so we've been overseas now in the DR for about 14 years, I think. And for the first part of that, we partnered with other organizations and worked alongside them. And about 7 years ago, it just became very difficult. The group that we were working, and it was so hard, why there was so much conflict with the board of directors of that group. And we wound up, after some very difficult months, deciding that we needed to step away and start our own organization. And that's not something we initially thought we would ever do. But because of that hard time, we're definitely in a much better place and position than we would have been. And it's not something we would have thought to do on our own without that difficulty.
Yeah. Fantastic. John Irway.
I'm struggling to think of like a specific example, but kind of like John Hanley, we were overseas with a mission organization. and some crazy things happened that I never anticipated happening, but there was growth that came out of that experience that never would have been possible had we not, been, I don't want to say subjected to, but involved in some of those difficult situations. The other thing that's crossing my mind, just kind of in general, if we're talking about this, is for me, some of the times that I have been most fulfilled in my life are the moments either coming out of those difficult situations or immediately after, when I've overcome whatever that is. That's the time that I've felt like, yes, I'm really alive, I'm really doing this. And those feelings wouldn't have happened if those struggles weren't presented. So yeah, it's hard to, for me, like you were saying, you love the traffic now because it's time for more podcasts, which I love listening to podcasts, but I can't quite pull that trigger of loving that situation yet. I'm still in the trying to find the good in it.
Yeah, I hear you, John, and to that end, as I've been working on that concept of amor fati, and someone who's further down the Stoic path than me corrected me immediately and said, it's not finding the good in a bad situation. That's not amor fati. Amor fati is calling the bad decision good, or calling the bad experience good. Getting stuck in traffic is good. That's hard. But he says, the Stoics talk about your life being a fire, and the fire consumes everything that goes on it. Good stuff, bad stuff, whatever, the fire consumes it. So everything is fuel. Everything is driving you to your next goal. Everything is giving you energy to move on to your next thing. I'll share a specific thing as I was thinking of a little bit about my personal work story, and I actually shared a little bit of this with Chuck, the last Help and Hope, but I was working in a job that was just absolutely terrible, and I'd been there for 7 years, and I got an inkling that there was a way to make a living as an actor at Disney World. That is a huge jump to make, from going from, a career where I'm making $45,000 a year, whatever it was, to working at it for an hourly, tops $15 an hour for Disney, with no guarantee of employment. And that is if you audition, because there's probably 1,000 people auditioning for 100 jobs, and it's a lot of competition. But I could have looked at that obstacle and said, well, let me find a way around that, or let me find a way over it or under it. But the only way to do it was to do it. And I started auditioning, and for 6 months I went to auditions, same guys, same table, same thing, over and over and over for 6 months. And then I got an offer for 6 weeks to do a 6-week gig. I gave up a 7-year career for a 6-week gig. And I was not the sole breadwinner, but I was the majority breadwinner in the house. And this was like, well, my wife supported me, and she said, yeah, let's do this. Let's go through this obstacle. And we did. And 6 weeks later, I didn't have a job, but I kept going, and I kept auditioning. 9 months later, long story, already too long, I got a full-time contract, and I've been working full-time in theme parks for 16 years now. But going through that made me just appreciate it so much more, of how difficult it is to get into this field and to be successful moderately at it. But it's also, that story has spurred in me one-man shows that I've written, 2 one-man shows kind of based on that whole idea of being what you're supposed to be and going through the obstacle, whatever the cost. And so there's been so much that have come through that, where if I would have looked at that obstacle and said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go through the pain of working for a lot less money. I mean, we almost lost our house at one point, and we went through that suffering, and fortunately have come out the other side and learned not just that I'm much more happy in life, but learned a lot of lessons that are going to have lasting values that I can also share with my children. So that's a specific for me of going through an obstacle. Anybody else have something they want to throw on the fire?
Yeah, I'll say something.
Go for it, Chuck.
Talking about an obstacle, us moving down here was huge. I mean, I knew nothing about this area of Florida, so, we born and raised in Philly and, moved to Jersey. I knew that like the back of my hand. But for me and Nancy, it's a huge decision to get up and leave friends and family and, just to come. We had no idea, so that was, and we're still trying to get acclimated. It's not like a quick fix. You move to this area and everything, right. It's beautiful down here and all that, but there's still things that you miss back home, and you have to balance that. And we're trying to do that. But, there was many sleepless nights saying, are we really going to do this? We're going to sell the house and move to Florida. And, obviously we did it. We had zero regrets. But yeah, it was, leaving my job after 33 years, walking away from six weeks of vacation, full benefits, that was a big decision. It was a huge decision, but in retrospect, it's working, I guess. But yeah, it was tough. It wasn't like, oh, let's just move. It was a lot of talking. We actually sat down. We were down here looking at houses. We actually were staying at a hotel in Westby Chapel. We actually went down, got a piece of paper, pros, cons. Okay, pros, cons. Okay, so that kind of helped. It was kind of even. There wasn't all pros or cons, but we took a leap of faith and we did it. And it's been good. It's been really good. But that was our dream to move down here. Always. We always talked about it. More so Nancy. I liked it down here, but she loved it since she was a kid. But yeah, that was so between the moving, the work, leaving the job after 33 years, it was a tough decision. But like I said, it's working out. It's working out. So I can definitely relate to relocation for anybody. So that's what I have to say.
Great. Thank you
Yeah.
very much, Chuck.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else got something they want to put out there? This is good.
Yeah, I can share.
Please.
One of the biggest painful things in my life that I grew through, I believe, would be the year I got married. My father died in April. I got married in July. It wasn't unexpected that he died. He went for a liver transplant, but I worked for my dad at the time, and we built kitchens and installed them. And he did all the designing and all the pricing, and I did the work in the shop, and I did installs. And I always used to say, I love doing this, and I never want to work. I never want to have to go talk to people. And then through this, 2 years later, I took the business over myself. I took some time off after he died, but I ended up spending now 36 years talking to people and doing jobs on my own. So it's obviously something I would not have. I probably, if my dad were still here, I'd still be working for my dad, and probably wouldn't. I don't know if I would have progressed to that point, but that was I can't say I love that pain, but I love the growth through it. And yeah, that's that story.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jim. All right. I don't want to move on without everybody having an opportunity. So if anybody else wants to go, I've heard from, I think, most of us. That's awesome. Appreciate the input. I was watching something on the moon landing just recently, and that quote from JFK came through, and it again was like so appropriate for this week. He says, we do this thing And the other thing, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. That's why we do them. And another quote from the book is, it's the journey that's important, not the destination. A good thing to keep reminding us. And as myself, as in my first times of coaching, I had a really easy time with Optavia. It was not hard for me. It was really easy. The weight came off. I didn't have any problems. I was immediately relieved of a lot of pain and issues. But I forget it's not that way with everybody. And I think I do my clients a disservice if I tell them it's easy. Because it's not. It is a change. It is a work. And as one of my clients said, he said, it's changed the way I think about eating now, because I'm eating for the future. I'm not eating for today. I'm eating for the journey. And then this quote, which came out of the book, which I think is a really good summation, especially for our clients, or for our other family members who are in Optavia, or for ourselves, if we're just thinking about it. But do what most won't do now, so that later you can live like most can't. Whether that's related to your weight loss, whether it's related to your food choices, whether it's related to your financial choices. Jamil in the last shift talked about how for years he and his wife just reduced financially, and for years lived on, the lowest common, or the lowest level of income that they could, because they want to live like most can't later. So living for the future, doing that hard work, and then going through the tough times. We're seeing how all these different shifts are holding together. Any other thoughts on shift 4, growth through pain, before we move on? It's coming. Here we go. We're ready. It's time for support from Alan. Dun, 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 dun. Alan is going to tell us about this recipe. That looks pretty good. Alan, take it away.
Okay. So what you're looking at there in the photo is a tray of spaghetti squash shrimp lo mein. I actually made this, the recipe makes one serving that is one lean green. That tray was probably about 8 to 10 servings of it all put together. And I took it to a holiday gathering with one of my other employers. And although there were people who brought a wide variety of other things to eat, my tray of food turned out to be the first thing to go away because it had shrimp and it was different. What I like about the shrimp lo mein with spaghetti squash is it is a Optavia compliant form of something Chinese food. It has shrimp, which is a lean protein and one of my favorites, and you can choose whether or not you want to spice it up with a little bit of red pepper and give it some kick. So the people who want spicy can have spicy, and the people who don't want spicy don't have to have spicy. And there's also a variation of this. If you want to do chicken instead of shrimp, you just take out 1 tablespoon of the 1 teaspoon of one of the oils, and you use shrimp, use chicken instead of shrimp, and you get chicken lo mein. So it's 2 recipes for the price of 1. How about that?
Now, for those of us who may not have cooked spaghetti squash before, there's a secret to that, right?
The microwave oven is your friend. Poke a bunch of holes in it with a fork. I use a pointy knife to cut a small triangle about 1/4 inch on the sides so that I've got a good vent hole. You don't want the thing to decide to explode. But as long as it can steam, I run it about 6 minutes at a time in the microwave. A big spaghetti squash may take a full 12 minutes to get tender on the outside. Then you half it and scoop the insides out with a fork. And what you get is nice long tendrils of what is a vegetable that is still a little bit of a texture, almost like an al dente noodle. Yeah. And it is great for holding sauce if you want to have spaghetti sauce beef mushrooms on it, boom, that works. If you want to have a lo mein, this works too. The combination of the oils and the spices with the sesame oil and the different things that are in there, including, I think it's a little bit of teriyaki sauce, and some light soy sauce, and the garlic and ginger. It really, it's a lot of different combinations in just mostly powdered spices. So you're not getting a lot of calories, you're not getting a lot of carbs, and it works.
That's a good one. Thanks so much, Alan.
Yeah.
All right, guys, so next meeting is going to be Thursday, December 15th. Shift 5, light yourself on fire. You thought this one was about pain. Wait till we get to shift 5. I will be on my way to the Bahamas on December the 15th. So John Irway has agreed to step up and facilitate that meeting. So thanks in advance, John, for doing that. So I will actually see you guys in a month. I guess it'll be, or at least two meetings, however that trickles out. So I'm going to stop the recording for those of us that are watching along, and then we can talk about anything else we want to talk about. So let me go ahead and do that. For those of you who joined us on the meeting virtually, thanks for watching. We hope you can join us live at 7:30 on the first and third Thursdays of every month. I hope you enjoyed Ironmen, and keep going, guys, and keep working through that struggle.